In the past, I've covered some pretty intense and crazy Saab auctions in videos, ranging from high dollar cars to rare models and everything in between. And today we have the lowest mileage Saab I think I've ever seen at any auction, and that is this 78 mile Saab 900 SIS that recently went up on the block at Bring a Trailer. You might have noticed there I said went on the block. The car actually did not meet reserve and did not sell. So we're going to discuss a few reasons for that in today's video, but before we do that, let's go over the car, talk about what it is, what makes it so unique and special. I am recovering from being sick, so if my voice sounds a bit off, I apologize. But 78 mile Saab 900 turbo convertible SIS, which is springtime in Sweden edition. This car bid to $59,500, which right off the bat is one of the highest selling classic 900s, highest, bid Saabs. Selling is not the correct term to use, but there was a $145,000 900 convertible that sold a couple years back at the peak of the market. We'll refer back to that car later in this video, but let's go over details. Obviously, 78 miles, that's the big ticket item. That's the big clickbait item that everyone's interested in. This car was actually delivered to the current owner from the dealership new. In other words, the car, at least from my understanding, has never been registered before. And you can see right here, it says it remained as an unsold display vehicle and now shows 78 miles. So it is one of 288 springtime in Sweden 900s, just kind of limited edition. It had black over buffalo gray. They were all black, they were all convertibles, and they all had the gray interior. They also all had the SPG body kit, as you can see here. I believe they also all had these 15-inch 3-spoke wheels as well. This ad is not terribly specific. It kind of just goes over, the obvious typical standard features and equipment that come on a classic 900. So we'll go through the pictures here. It does say that the car did have an oil change and some brake hoses and fluid replaced prior to the sale. We'll also discuss some more about that later in the video. There's a good picture of the Springtime in Sweden badge on the glove box trim. You can see, even for 78 miles, it's an age thing on some of this stuff rather than a mileage thing. These little bubbles start to pop up just over 35 years of age, no matter where it's stored or how much or little it's driven. Engine bay is obviously spotless. Underside is also spotless, so that's beautiful. And this also actually brings me to another very important detail about this car. It is a 3-speed automatic as opposed to a 5-speed manual. And that is perhaps the single most important detail for why this car did not sell. But I'll link the ad or the auction listing in the video description if you're interested in checking it out. There's some videos here of them driving it. I mean, the car is obviously in fantastic shape. Clearly, whoever has owned it all these years or the dealer that's had it has done a fantastic job. The leather looks brand new. I bet it smells fantastic. Obviously, uncracked dashboard. There's the odometer with 78 miles on it. It's just crazy to look at. I mean, this car is truly, truly a time capsule, and super, super cool that someone has spent all this time preserving such an example. All of the motor mounts and other pieces still have their zinc plating on them. That's pretty cool to see. AC compressor, but you can see even over the years, like this coolant bottle has just started to yellow. These are just age things that don't matter dependent on mileage in most cases. Underside, not a speck of rust. There's not oil everywhere. I'm a bit jealous of that. So clearly, it's, like I said, it's been well taken care of and looked after. So they've gone through and even provided depth measurements on the paint to show that it's, I guess, good quality paint. I do want to see, the ad did not mention about tires. It did say it was sitting on factory equipped Michelins. So I assume it might have really old tires, but I would think that at some point the tires would have been replaced. I can't quite see a date code anywhere on these tires, but just looking at the Michelin font and the other markings that are on here, they definitely do not look like new Michelin tires. So I'll leave that up to your judgment there. But that's kind of a quick overview of the car. let's discuss why it didn't sell. I mentioned earlier that a lot of people in the Saab community were comparing this to the 246-mile example of a 900 turbo convertible that sold a couple years back for $145,000. And that was shocking to the entire car world back when that happened, including all of us Saab enthusiasts. And so I think a lot of people assumed that this car would go for similar money. However, one important distinction is that that car was sold to an individual who had a lot of sentimental value in that car. That was apparently the car that he took his wife in their first date on, or an identical car, I should say. And so he wanted to buy it for that reason. Whereas this car, more likely than not, was being purchased by a collector. Obviously, the heart can drive someone to spend more money on something than it might be worth. And so nothing wrong with that, of course, but that's just the reality of the situation for why that car sold for so much. Now, I'm curious to know what the reserve was on this particular model. Bring a Trailer does not disclose that information to my knowledge. Who knows, they could have been very close to reserve, but I have a feeling the reserve was probably quite a bit higher than where they had it at. So this car is also different from that red convertible in the fact that it's a 3-speed automatic. Now, do I think that if it had a 5-speed manual, it would have sold for 6 figures? I don't think so. I do think there would have been a lot more interest in it though. 3-speed automatic really just hurts the value in most cases when it comes to the classic 900s, and you can see that. I think this car especially probably would have brought a bit more money, or at least bid a good bit higher with a manual. Let's also look at another factor, the time of year. It's currently winter in North America, and while that's great for people like me who live in the desert, in a majority of the country, especially in areas where people are driving Saabs, it is freezing right now and it is not convertible season. I think, and a lot of others think, that if this car had sold sometime in the spring, it probably would have bid a bit higher and there probably would have been a lot more people interested in it. The car market as a whole has definitely come down from the COVID high. The 900 market has softened, probably not quite as much as the general car market. And I think as a result, that's part of the reason. I don't think that's really as substantial as a reason though as some of these other issues or factors, I should say. And lastly, the car had a reserve. Typically with car auctions, whether it's on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, or another site, no reserve typically goes for or brings more money. So again, I'm not sure what that reserve was set at. It could have been, who knows, as high as $100,000. I know Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids and other auction sites don't let people just subjectively set a reserve that experts know the car won't hit. But with a car like this, it's so unique and you never see a car with that mileage come up for sale that it's hard to put a good value on it. I would say, given that's an automatic and the condition, given the time of year, I think 60, 70,000 probably would have been a more than fair reserve to have. Again, I think if this maybe sold in the spring, I think they probably would have at least gotten bids up in that range. But again, keep in mind that whoever's buying this car is likely a collector and is therefore not going to be driving it that much. So who knows, maybe the season factor doesn't matter at all. Another very important thing to keep in mind is that this car is also probably going to need a good bit of work if the buyer chose to make it truly roadworthy. We talked about the tires, of course. I alluded to the fluids earlier. It had an oil change done, which is great, but all those rubber hoses, all those rubber seals, everything is probably dry rotted after 35 years, and especially not having oil or coolant or other fluids running through it regularly, those are probably a lot more prone to being dry rotted than a car that has been driven regularly over 35 years. That also applies to things like suspension as well. This car hopefully was stored in a dealership showroom, it sure sounds like, so it's probably been stored in quite ideal conditions, which is good, but you never really know. So with that said, I think, in my non-expert opinion, I think 60 to 70,000 probably would have been a realistic, selling price for this car. And I think seeing it get bid up to 60 or just about 60 is pretty good. That's all for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I hope you all have a happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one.